Story 1. The Night Shift. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I've got some seriously weird stories for you tonight. Stuff I dug up from the darkest corners of the internet. These stories, they're the kind that stick with you, that make you double-check your locks and wonder what's lurking just out of sight. I've picked the best ones. Everything I share is creepy, compelling, and so awesome that you can't take your eyes off it. Thanks for stopping by. You guys are the best. If you haven't already, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers before the year is out. Let's do it. Okay, enough chit-chat. Let's get started. I was a cop. Jack Carter, that's me. Or at least, that's who I used to be. 12 years on the force, and I loved every gritty minute of it. Until last night. Now, I'm done. I'm not showing up today, not after what I saw. I'm ready to chuck that badge and walk away for good. It all started just past midnight. The radio in my cruiser crackling to life. Domestic disturbance. 1500 block of Woodward Avenue, Detroit. It had been a slow night. Nothing but the engine's hum and the flicker of streetlights to keep me awake. A call was a lifeline, something to shake off the daze. Dispatch said a neighbor heard a woman screaming down the hall of some run-down apartment block. No big deal, right? Most times, it's just a mom yelling at her kids or a wife chewing out her husband. I've seen it all. Didn't even bother with the sirens as I pulled out. Rolled up to this crumbling pile of bricks. Shattered windows, peeling paint, the works. Reported my status to dispatch, the radio spitting static as the woman on the other end confirmed I was there. Her voice cut through the silence, sharp and empty. A few curious eyes peeked out from behind curtains, tenants staring at my cruiser like I was bad news on wheels. I've been doing this long enough to feel those looks crawl under my skin, but I brushed it off. Stepped out, boots hitting pavement, and headed inside. The hallway was a black pit, lit only by a couple of buzzing bulbs flickering like they were about to give up. My footsteps echoed off the concrete, loud and awkward in the dead quiet. Felt like I was shouting my arrival to whatever was waiting. 3rd floor, that's where I was going. Took the stairs, each creak sounding like a warning I didn't want to hear. The air up there was thick, stale, like the building hadn't taken a breath in years. No one watched from the windows now, but I'd swear something had me in its sights. Hairs on my neck stood up, that gut instinct you can't ignore. Kept moving, shoes clacking, fighting the urge to rest a hand on my gun. Can't be that cop, the twitchy one you see on TV, right? But my fist stayed clenched, ready for anything. 12 years taught me the real monsters aren't under beds. They're out here, wearing human faces. The dad who beats his kids black and blue. The guy who kills for sport. The old lady with a gleam in her eye that says she's done worse than you'd ever guess. And there she was. Door cracked open just enough for her to stare out. Margaret Ellis, I'd find out later. But right then she was just wild eyes and a gnarled finger motioning me closer. Thin, patchy hair clung to her head, her mouth a toothless slash across her wrinkled face. She looked like death warmed over, and the way she glared, like she wanted to slice me open and keep the scraps, stopped me cold. My stomach knotted up, sour and tight like I'd swallowed something foul. She hissed at me, voice rough as gravel. "What took you so damn long?" I blinked, brain scrambling to catch up. This was the place, the one who'd called it in. Pulled myself together, asked her what was happening. She shooshed me quick, eyes darting down the hall like something might hear us. Nearly slammed the door in my face when one of those dying lights flickered overhead. Her gaze begged me to step closer, but my boots felt stuck to the floor. Took a step anyway, just one. She leaned in, breath hot and rank. It's down there. It's watching us. My chest tightened, a flutter I couldn't shake. Then it hit, a scream, sharp and ragged, tearing down the hall. Knocked me back, hand flying to my gun. Margaret's door banged shut, leaving me alone with that sound ringing in my head. End of the hall, there it was. A woman, naked, crouched where the passage split, shaken like a stray in a storm. Fumbled for my flashlight, fingers clumsy, gut screaming not to look. But I had to. Flipped it on, beam slicing the dark. She was skin stretched over bones, ribs jutting out, hair draped over her face like a shroud. Rocking back and forth, silent. No cries, no whimpers. Just that awful stillness. Called out, voice wobbly, asking if she was okay. Stupid question. She didn't answer, just twitched when my boot scraped the floor. Told her it'd be all right, not sure who I was trying to convince. Hit the radio for EMS, thumb jamming the button. Nothing. No static, no reply, just dead air. Looked back and she'd stopped shaking. Felt like I'd tripped a wire, one wrong move and it'd all blow. Swallowed hard, throat dry as sand. The air got heavy, pressing down on me. Her chest heaved, quick and shallow. I shifted my weight, barely a flinch, and that's when she moved. Head jerked up, hair parting just enough to show her mouth. Stitched shut, thick threads tugging the skin, blood dripping off her chin. Couldn't see her eyes, but the way those red streaks ran, I knew they were sewn too. She lunged, hands clawing the floor. My gun was out before I could think, flashlight clattering down. Opened fire, muzzle flashes lighting her up, skinny arms reaching, stitches ripping. Bullets tore through her, I saw it, but she kept coming, fast and wrong. Emptied the mag, last shot dropping her, or so I thought. Hit the ground hard, flashlight rolling off, its beam the only light left. Scrambled for it, heart pounding, swung it back where she'd been. Gone. She was gone. A door slammed nearby, and I caught a bare foot vanishing behind it. Margaret's door. I stood there, frozen, flashlight beam shaking in my grip. That bare foot slipping behind Margaret's door. It burned into my head, a snapshot I couldn't unsee. The hall was dead quiet now, no screams, no scraping, just my own ragged breathing bouncing off the walls. My gun hung heavy in my hand, empty clip mocking me. 12 years on the job, and I'd never fired like that. Wild, panicked, unloading everything into something that wouldn't stop. My ears still rang from the shots, a high-pitched whine cutting through the haze. I wanted to run, bolt down those creaky stairs and peel out in the cruiser. But I couldn't. Not yet. Stepped toward Margaret's door, slow, like the floor might crack open and swallow me. The air felt wrong, thicker, colder, like it was pushing back. Radio still dead, not even a hiss. Tried it again, thumb mashing the button, whispering into it like that'd make a difference. Dispatch. This is Carter. I need backup, EMS, something. Now. Silence. Looked at my watch. 12:47 a.m. Felt like hours since I'd climbed those stairs, but the numbers didn't lie. Knocked on the door, fist heavy against the chipped wood. Margaret? It's Officer Carter. Open up. Nothing. Pressed my ear to it, faint rustling like someone dragging a bag across the floor. Then a thud, sharp and final. Screw procedure. Kicked the door, boot slamming just below the knob. Wood splintered, lock gave way, and it swung open into darkness. Flashlight swept the room, cluttered, stale, like a hoarder's tomb. Piles of newspapers, cracked dishes, a sagging couch leaking stuffing. Smell hit me hard, mold and something sour, metallic. Blood, couldn't tell. Margaret called her name louder, voice cracking. Stepped inside, gun up even with no bullets left. Habit, I guess. Floorboards groaned under me, and there she was, sprawled in the corner, eyes wide, staring at nothing. Blood pooled under her head, dark and sticky, matting her thin hair. Dead. Fresh dead. Knelt down, checked her neck for a pulse I knew wouldn't be there. Skin cold already, but the blood was still wet. Whatever got her, it was quick. Looked around, no weapon, no signs of a fight, just her crumpled like a rag doll. Then I saw it. Scratches on the floor, long and jagged, leading to a closet door across the room, like something dragged itself, or her, over there. Heart kicked up again, pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. Stood, slow, flashlight locked on that door. It was shut tight, but I heard it. A low, wet gurgle, like someone trying to breathe through a clogged pipe. "Police! Come out! Hands where I can see 'em!" Yelled it like I meant it, but my voice shook. No answer, just that gurgling, louder now. Took a step, then another, floor creaking with every move. Reached for the knob, hand trembling, and yanked it open. Empty. Just coats, moth-eaten and sagging, and a pile of old shoes. But the sound, it was still there, coming from inside. Leaned in, flashlight shaking, and saw it. A trapdoor in the floor, barely a foot square, edges caked with grime. The gurgle echoed up from below, mixed with something else now. A whisper, fast and frantic, words I couldn't catch. Popped the trapdoor, hinges squealing. Stairs dropped down into black, steep and narrow, disappearing past the light's reach. Smell hit me worse, rotting meat, copper, damp earth, like a slaughterhouse basement. Froze there, staring into it, every instinct screaming to get the hell out. But that whisper kept pulling, tugging at me like a hook in my gut. Adjusted my grip on the flashlight, gun still useless in my other hand, and started down. Steps were slick, mossy almost, and I nearly slipped twice. Counted 10 before my boots hit dirt, the air so cold it stung my lungs. Flashlight swept around, a cellar, low ceiling, walls of crumbling brick. Puddles glistened on the floor, dark and thick, reflecting the beam like oil. Then I saw her, the woman from the hall. She was there, hunched against the far wall, stitches still dripping blood down her face. But she wasn't alone. Shadows moved, too many to count, shifting just outside the light. Couldn't make them out, too fast, too wrong, but I felt them watching. She turned her head, slow, neck cracking like dry twigs. Mouth opened, thread snapping, and a sound came out. Not a scream, not a word, just a wet, hollow rasp that made my skin crawl. Backed up, heel catching on something soft. Swung the light down. A body, fresh, throat torn open, eyes glassy. Another cop, uniform torn, badge glinting in the dark. Officer Reyes, a rookie I'd trained 6 months back. Dead down here, and I hadn't even known he'd been called in. Panic hit. Real panic. The kind that turns your legs to jelly. She moved then, fast, scuttling across the floor like a spider, hands slapping the dirt. Dropped the flashlight, swung my empty gun like a club. Connected with her skull, a dull thunk, but she didn't stop. Claws, her nails were claws now, raked my arm, hot pain searing up to my shoulder. Stumbled back, light rolling away, beams spinning wild. Shadows closed in, whispers turning to growls. Kicked at her, boot catching her chest, and she hissed, recoiling just enough for me to grab the flashlight. Bolted for the stairs, blood dripping down my arm, slipping on every step. Made it up, slammed the trap door shut, and threw myself against it. She hit it from below, hard, wood buckling under my weight. Held it down, chest heaving, waiting for backup that wasn't coming. The growls faded, replaced by that gurgle again, fainter now, but still there. Sat there, shaking till my watch beeped. 1:30 a.m. Arm throbbed, blood soaking my sleeve, but the scratches were shallow. Looked back at Margaret, still dead in her corner, and realized I couldn't explain this. Not to dispatch, not to anyone. Radio stayed silent, and the hall outside was still a tomb. Whatever was down there, it wasn't done with me. Felt it in my bones, a itch I couldn't scratch. Stood, legs wobbly, and staggered out, leaving Margaret behind. Cruiser was still parked where I'd left it, but the street felt different. Too quiet, too empty. Drove home, arms stinging, mind racing. Kept seeing her face, those stitches, that rasp. Checked the rear view every 10 seconds, expecting her to be there, crouched in the back seat. Got inside, locked the door, and sank onto the couch. Wife was asleep upstairs, oblivious. Thought about waking her, telling her everything. But what did I say? That I'd shot a thing that wouldn't die? That it followed me up from some hole under Detroit? Arm itched worse now, skin around the scratches turning red, hot. Figured it was adrenaline, shock, anything but what it really was. I sat there on the couch, staring at the wall, the hum of the fridge the only sound in the house. Arm burned like hell, the scratches pulsing under my sleeve. Pulled it up, 3 red lines, swollen now, skin around them hot and tight. Looked infected, but it had only been an hour since that thing clawed me. Should have cleaned it, grabbed some peroxide from the bathroom, but I couldn't move. Legs felt like lead, mind stuck on that cellar. Reyes' dead eyes, her stitched face, those shadows slinking in the dark. The itch spread, crawling up my arm into my shoulder. Told myself it was nothing, just nerves. 12 years on the force, I'd seen bad nights. This was just one more. Right? Clock ticked past 2 a.m. Wife, Lydia, was still upstairs, probably sprawled across the bed like always. Didn't want to wake her, drag her into this mess. She'd ask questions, and I didn't have answers, not ones that made sense. Kept flexing my hand, trying to shake the stiffness creeping in. Fingers felt off, heavy like they weren't mine. Stood up, finally, swaying a little, and shuffled to the kitchen. Ran the tap, splashed cold water on my face. Caught my reflection in the window, pale, bags under my eyes, sweat beading on my forehead. Looked like a junkie coming down from a high. The itch hit my neck, sharp and sudden. Scratched at it, nails digging in, and felt something. Bumps, small and hard, under the skin. Froze. Checked the bathroom mirror, tilting my head under the light. There they were, tiny lumps like cysts running along my jawline. Pressed one and it hurt, a deep, throbbing ache. Blood rushed in my ears, loud enough to drown out the drip of the faucet. Backed away, hands shaking, and bumped into the sink. Bottle of peroxide sat there, unopened. Grabbed it, twisted the cap off, and dumped it on my arm. Stung like a bastard, white foam bubbling up, but the scratches didn't look any better. If anything, they were redder, angrier. Heard a creak upstairs, Lydia, shifting in bed. Held my breath, waiting, but she didn't call out. Good. Last thing I needed was her seeing me like this, falling apart in our shitty little bathroom. The itch kept spreading, chest now a prickling heat under my ribs. Peeled off my shirt, slow like I was scared of what I'd find. Skin looked normal at first, then I saw it. Faint lines like veins branching out from the scratches. Not blue, though, dark red, almost black, snaking toward my heart. Dropped the shirt, hands gripping the sink, staring at myself. "Get it together, Jack," I muttered. Sounded weak, even to me. Went back to the couch, sat heavy, and tried to think. That thing in the cellar, it had done this. Clawed me, infected me, or something worse. Flash to Reyes, throat ripped open, badge glinting in the dirt. Had he seen her too? Radioed for help that never came? Arm throbbed again, and I scratched it without thinking. Harder this time, nails tearing skin. Blood welled up, warm and sticky, but it felt good, like scratching a mosquito bite you've ignored too long. Stopped myself, staring at the mess. What the hell was I doing? A noise, soft like a sigh, came from upstairs. Lydia. Had to be. Stood, grabbed my flashlight off the coffee table, and started up the stairs. Each step creaked, loud in the quiet, and my shadow stretched ahead, warped on the wall. The itch was everywhere now. Legs, back, scalp, like ants crawling under my skin. Reached the bedroom door, cracked it open. Lydia was there, asleep, curled under the blankets. Watched her chest rise and fall, steady, normal. Relief hit me, but it didn't last. Something moved, behind her, in the dark corner by the dresser. A shape, low and hunched. Snapped the flashlight on, beam cutting through the room. Nothing. Just shadows, the dresser, her old rocking chair. Lydia stirred, mumbling something, but didn't wake. Lowered the light, heart still hammering. Imagination, that's all. Had to be. Turned to leave, and the floor creaked. Not under me, behind me. Spun around, light swinging wild, empty again. But the air felt heavy like it had in that hall, that cellar. Backed out, slow, and shut the door. Leaned against it, catching my breath. The itch flared, worse now, and I clawed at my chest, nails raking over those black veins. Downstairs again, pacing, trying to piece it together. That woman, her stitches, her speed, she wasn't human. Not anymore. And whatever she was, it was in me now. Arm looked worse, scratches oozing, skin around them graying, like rot setting in. Panic clawed up my throat, but I swallowed it. Called the station from my cell, fingers fumbling the numbers. No answer, just ringing, endless ringing. Slammed it down, cursing. Looked at my watch, 3:15 a.m. Felt like days since I'd left that apartment block, but time was dragging its feet. Heard it again, a creak, louder, from the stairs. Grabbed the flashlight, swung it up. Lydia stood there, halfway down, nightgown hanging off her, eyes bleary. "Jack, what's wrong?" Her voice was soft, sleepy, but it hit me like a punch. Didn't want her near me, not like this. "Go back to bed," I said, sharper than I meant. She frowned, took another step. "You're bleeding." Looked down, my chest, scratched raw, blood streaking down to my waist. "It's nothing," I lied, turning away. "Just go back up." She didn't move. "You're scaring me, Jack. What happened out there?" Couldn't look at her. The itch burned and my hands twitched, wanting to dig into my skin again. "Long night," I muttered. "I'll tell you later." She stepped closer, bare feet soft on the wood, and I snapped. "Lydia, go!" She froze, eyes wide, then turned and climbed back up, slow, like I'd slapped her. Door clicked shut upstairs, and I sank to the floor, head in my hands. The itch was unbearable now, a fire under my skin, and I scratched again. Arm, neck, chest, blood smearing everywhere. Then I felt it, a pull, sharp and deep, like something yanking my insides. Looked up and the room tilted. Shadows stretched, longer than they should have, pooling in the corners. Heard that rasp again, wet, hollow, like her voice in the cellar. It was close, too close. Stood unsteady, flashlight shaking in my grip. Beam hit the kitchen doorway, and there she was, stitches torn, blood dripping, crouched like an animal. Not a hallucination, not my head screwing with me. Real. Here. In my house. She moved, fast, too fast, and I swung the flashlight, cracking her jaw. She hissed, reeling back, and I ran for the door. Hit the lock, fumbled it open, and stumbled outside. Cold air stung my lungs, blood freezing on my skin. Looked back. She was gone, but the pull stayed, tugging me toward the street, the night, that damn apartment block. Arm throbbed, veins blacker now, spreading. I wasn't just infected. I was changing. I stood there on the porch, shivering in the dark, blood crusting on my chest. The street was silent, Detroit's usual hum swallowed by the night. Arm throbbed like a second heartbeat, veins black and bulging now, snaking past my elbow. The pull was stronger, sharp, insistent, dragging me back toward Woodward Avenue, that damn apartment block. Couldn't shake her face, stitches ripped, blood dripping, eyes I'd never seen but felt boring into me. She'd been in my house, inches from me, and now she was out here, waiting. I knew it, felt it. Looked back at the door. Lydia was inside, probably curled up, confused, hurt. Wanted to go to her, explain, but what did I say? Hey, honey, I'm turning into something that claws people apart. The itch was a roar now, skin splitting where I'd scratched too deep. Flexed my hand, fingers bent wrong, nails sharper, darker. Not human anymore. Panic clawed my throat, but that pull yanked harder, drowning it out. Took a step, then another, boots scuffing the pavement. Cruiser sat in the driveway, keys still in my pocket. Got in, started it, and peeled out, headlights cutting through the black. Drove fast, too fast, weaving past empty lots and shuttered storefronts. Arm burned, steering wheel slick with sweat and blood. Kept glancing at it, skin graying, peeling, like something dead left out too long. The veins pulsed, thick and alive, crawling up my neck now. Felt them under my jaw, hot and wrong. Mirror showed my eyes, yellowing, pupils narrowing to slits. Bit down hard, tasting blood, and realized my teeth were sharper too. Whatever she'd done, it was fast, rewriting me from the inside out. Radio stayed dead, dashboard clock glowing 4:02 a.m. Dawn was close, but it wouldn't save me. Pulled up to the apartment block, tires screeching. Same crumbling heap, same flickering lights. Stepped out, legs shaky, and the pull hit like a punch, straight to the third floor. Margaret's place. Didn't bother with the flashlight, eyes adjusted too well now, picking out details in the dark I shouldn't have seen. Stairs creaked under me, louder this time, and the air was thick again, heavy with that rotty stink from the cellar. Reached her door, still hanging off its hinges from my kick. Inside, Margaret's body was gone. No blood, no scratches, just an empty corner. Like she'd never been there. The trap door called me, a whisper slithering up from below. Popped it open. Same squeal, same stench. Worse now, choking. Climbed down, slower this time, boots slipping on the slick steps. Hit the dirt and the cellar stretched out, bigger than before, walls dripping wet, puddles deeper, redder. Reyes was still there, throat torn, staring at nothing. But she wasn't alone now. Shapes moved, dozens hunched, scuttling in the shadows. Stitched mouths, clawed hands, eyes glinting when my beam hit them. They didn't rush me, just watched, waiting. She stepped forward, her stitches fully torn now, mouth a gaping slash, teeth like needles. "You're mine," she rasped, voice wet and broken. Froze me where I stood, felt the pull snap tight, tethering me to her. Tried to speak, but my throat locked up. Only a growl came out, low and animal. She smiled, if you could call it that, and the others closed in, circling. Arm throbbed, and I looked, nails fully black now, curling like talons. Skin sloughed off in patches, gray and rotten. Chest heaved, ribs showing through, and I felt it. Hunger, deep and gnawing. Not for food, but for something else. Blood, flesh, her. She lunged, and I met her. Didn't dodge, didn't run. Claws raked my side, but I swung back, tearing into her. Pain didn't register, just rage, hunger, a need I couldn't name. We crashed into the dirt, rolling, snapping, clawing. She was stronger, faster, but I was new, raw, unstoppable. Bit down on her arm, teeth sinking deep, blood hot and bitter. She screeched, thrashing, and the others howled, a sound that shook the walls, tore free, spitting her flesh, and she staggered back, grinning through the mess. "Finish it," she hissed. Didn't think, just acted. Lunged, claws slashing her throat, ripping through. She dropped, gurgling, blood pooling fast. The others froze, then scattered, vanishing into the dark. Stood there, panting, her body at my feet. Felt the pull fade, but the hunger stayed, sharper now. Looked at my hands, monstrous, dripping. Chest was a cage of bones, skin hanging loose. I wasn't Jack Carter anymore, not the cop, not the husband. Something else. Climbed out, slow, cellar shrinking behind me. Hit the hall, then the street. Dawn was breaking, gray light spilling over the city. Hunger gnawed harder, pulling me home. Drove back, windows down, wind stinging my ruined skin. Parked, staggered to the door, and went inside. Lydia was in the kitchen, coffee brewing. Back to me. "Jack," she said, turning. Saw me, really saw me, and screamed, cup shattering on the floor. Couldn't stop myself. The hunger took over, moved fast, claws out, and she didn't have time to run. Pinned her to the counter, teeth in her neck before I could think. Blood hit my tongue, warm, sweet, everything I needed. She fought, weak, then went limp. Drank deep, tearing until she was gone. Dropped her, blood soaking the tiles, and sank down beside her. Looked at her face, eyes open, empty, and felt nothing. No guilt, no love. Just full for now. Sat there till the sun was up, light streaming through the blinds. Arm didn't itch anymore, didn't feel much of anything. Stood, slow, and caught my reflection in the window. No face I knew, stitches sprouting along my jaw, eyes black slits, teeth jagged. Hunger was quiet, but I knew it had come back. Heard sirens in the distance. Someone must have called, didn't care. Walked out, leaving Lydia behind, blood still wet on my hands. Headed north, toward the river, the city waking up around me. People stared, crossed the street, but I kept moving. Found an alley, ducked in, and waited. Night would come again, and with it, the hunger. I'd hunt, had to. Wasn't a cop anymore, wasn't human. Just a thing, stitched and clawed, waiting for the dark. And when it came, I'd be ready.